Is your budget helping you grow, or is it just a spreadsheet that frankly you just ignore? In this video, we're going to cover three things. Firstly, what is a budget and why it matters? Secondly, what are the key elements within your budget? And thirdly, what are some of the key trends that we're currently seeing within the budgeting process? So let's start with the basics. What is a budget? A budget is a financial plan which sets out your income and expenses. And normally we do it, and when we do it for a future year. So we set it at a point at the end of the year, and we set it for the future year, the year that's coming up. Before you get into a budget though, what you should be clear on is what your objectives are for your firm, okay? Because what the budget does is it defines how those objectives are going to be delivered. So step one is make sure you've got clear objectives for your business. And some of those objectives would normally be financial. So normally they'll be around sales or controlling costs, and those elements need to be reflected in the budget. So one of the key advantages of doing a budget is it forces you to sit down and actually think about your business. Normally business owners are really busy in their day jobs, and most of them take very little time to actually sit down and think about what is important for their business and actually build a financial plan for the next period, normally for the next year. So when they're doing that, it just gives them clarity of thought, because they've got to think about all of the components. They've got to think about their sales, so where their sales are coming from. They've got to think about things like pricing and any potential price changes that are coming through. And all of those decisions are really, really important. So by doing a budget, they're kind of forced to make those decisions at that point. The second area that's really important is around looking at your cost base. So, how much we're going to spend next year, where our expenses are going to come from. One of those key elements of that is going to be around people and salaries if you've got people in your business. So therefore you've got to think about who we're going to hire, what level, what skills we're going to hire, and how much those skills are going to cost us to bring into the business. And then all of that really is then put into the budget. So an actual a monetary value is attached to all of those costs. And then what you can then start to build is what your profit and loss looks like. So how much income, how much revenue is going to come into your business, and how much expenses is going to go out. And then you can start looking at your profitability. And once you've got that sort of basic view, you can then start looking at your business and thinking about sort of trends. So what happens if things change? And things will always change. So you can then start running scenarios, and those scenarios perhaps could look at a scenario potentially higher sales, so you're actually selling more, or equally you could look at a scenario where sales are lower, you sell less. And in those types of scenarios, you can then think about what levers have I then got to protect my business or to grow my business. So again, it's forcing the business owner to think about the shape of their business and what might happen if things change, because things will change, and therefore it's identifying the potential levers that you've got within your business to potentially change profit if you need to. So if things are going well, you can potentially invest more in staff or more equipment, and equally if things are going badly, you can then think about the levers that you've got to potentially reduce cost to protect profit as well. So those things are really important. The other thing around budgeting is around understanding your sort of core financial metrics. So understanding your profitability, just how profitable are we? So what is our profit margin? Is it going up? Is it going down? What does that mean for our cash position? So if we're generating profits, are we generating cash? So all of those sort of questions that come out of that budgeting process. So that's why it's really important. So what are sort of the key elements you'd expect in a budget? Well, the standard one is sales, is income. So what are your revenues going to look like for the next period? What's the phasing of those revenues going to look like? You're going to have high quarters, low quarters, good months, bad months. All of those things you've got to think about and think about. What does that look like in terms of the overall shape of your financial plan? Second element is costs. So think about all your costs, and those could be capital costs, and it could be operating costs as well. By capital costs, I mean things like if you're buying machinery or equipment, or you might be looking at new premises. All of those things can be factored into that budgeting process. And the second element of costs is your overhead costs. So things like rent rates, IT costs, marketing spend, all of that stuff. The budgeting process, again, it forces you to think about what you're going to spend next year. And quite often what people do is they bring in their experts in their business. So they've got a marketing team, they'll ask the marketing team to look at their budget for next year. Then the business owner will normally take that budget and then consolidate it into their overall budget to build the overall financial plan. So those are the sort of the key components you expect to see in a budget. So lastly, so what are the key trends that we're seeing within the budgeting process? So the good news is there's loads of tools out there now to help with budgeting. So we use a tool called Fathom, which is an analytics software. And what that does is it uses AI, it looks at what's gone on in the past, and then it helps shape the budget for the future. And it comes up with potential predictions of how your budget or how your business is going to look for next year. And then you can also run scenarios through those types of systems very quickly. And then it will show you the impact of those different scenarios on your profit. So obvious example is you're going to hire new people. That's going to be a cost to your business, but hopefully it's also going to generate potential sales as well. So you can run those scenarios through that software. So the software now is there's definitely software out there that will help you in that process. So make sure when you're doing it that at a minimum using Excel to do it. But if you can use third-party software, say we use a system called Fathom, but there's plenty of others out there that are highly effective. Use that software as well to help you, because it just takes some of that heavy lifting out of the budgeting process and just makes your life easier. For some people, Excel is a perfectly good tool, and often some of the more sophisticated software will then allow you to export to Excel, and so you can then, if you work better in Excel, you can then manipulate data in Excel as well to help you with that scenario planning. So make sure you use the tools out there to help you with the budgeting process. So those are the sort of the key elements. Hope that you found that useful. If it has been useful, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks very much.